A woman boards first class in worn clothes and an old backpack. The crew judges her appearance, questions her ticket, and kicks her off the plane. They have no idea she's the owner of the entire airline. The next morning, she calls an emergency meeting to reveal the truth and transform everything. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The airport terminal buzzed with the usual chaos. Announcements echoed through speakers, children ran between rows of seats, and travelers dragged suitcases across polished floors. In the middle of it all sat Maya Chen, perfectly still, her hands resting on an old canvas backpack. She wore a simple gray sweater, the kind you'd find at any discount store. Her jeans had a small patch on one knee, carefully sewn. Her sneakers were clean but obviously old, the soles worn smooth from years of use. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. No jewelry. No makeup. Nothing that screamed money. Maya checked her watch. Still an hour before boarding. She pulled out a paperback book from her backpack and started reading. A woman in a designer suit walked past, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She glanced at Maya, then quickly looked away, her nose wrinkling slightly. Maya noticed but didn't react. She'd seen that look before. Many times. The gate agent's voice crackled through the speaker. Now boarding first-class passengers for Flight 447 to San Francisco. Maya closed her book, tucked it into her backpack, and stood up. She walked to the gate, her worn sneakers quiet against the carpet. She handed her boarding pass to the gate agent. The agent, a young man with perfectly styled hair, looked at the pass. Then at Maya. Then back at the pass. His eyebrows rose. "Ma'am, this says first class." "Yes," Maya said simply. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" "I'm sure." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Let me just verify this." He scanned the barcode. The computer beeped. His screen showed the ticket was valid. "Okay," he said slowly. "Go ahead." Maya walked down the jetway. The first-class cabin was already half full. Leather seats. Extra legroom. Passengers in expensive clothes sipping champagne. She found her seat, 2A, by the window. As she lifted her backpack into the overhead bin, the man across the aisle stared at her. He wore a three-piece suit and a gold watch that probably cost more than a car. "Excuse me," he said, his voice loud. "I think you're in the wrong section." Maya settled into her seat. "I'm in 2A. This is 2A. First class is for first-class passengers," he said, smirking. "Economy is back there." A woman 2 rows back laughed. She had perfectly manicured nails and held a glass of champagne. "Oh my God, this is hilarious." Did she seriously think she could just sit here? More passengers turned to look. Some smiled. A few pulled out their phones. Maya said nothing. She pulled her seatbelt across her lap and clicked it shut. That's when the flight attendant appeared. Her name tag read, Jessica. She was all polished perfection, from her tight bun to her pressed uniform. "Ma'am," Jessica said, her voice sweet but cold. "I need to see your boarding pass." Maya handed it to her without a word. Jessica examined it, her lips pursed. "This must be a mistake. How did you get a first-class ticket?" "I bought it." "You bought it," Jessica repeated, as if the words didn't make sense. "First-class tickets cost over $2,000. "I'm aware." The suited man across the aisle snorted. "Yeah, right. She probably stole it. Or found it in the trash," the champagne woman added. More laughter rippled through the cabin. Jessica's professional smile tightened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move to economy. We can't have this disruption." "I have a valid ticket for this seat," Maya said calmly. "I'm not moving." Jessica's eyes narrowed. Your appearance is making other passengers uncomfortable. Maya finally looked up at her, really looked at her. My appearance? This is first class. We have standards. The words hung in the air. Several passengers nodded in agreement. One man raised his phone higher, recording everything. Let me get the captain, Jessica said, turning on her heel. Maya sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She could feel every eye on her. Hear every whispered comment. She looks homeless. Probably trying to scam her way into a free upgrade. This is what happens when airlines don't screen people properly. A minute later, Captain Richard Brooks strode into the cabin. He was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself like a man who'd never been questioned. He didn't even look at Maya's ticket. Ma'am, you need to leave the aircraft, he announced. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Why? Maya asked. Because I'm the captain, and I'm telling you to leave. On what grounds? He gestured vaguely at her. Look at yourself. This is first class. You clearly don't belong here. The cabin erupted in whispers. More phones came out. Someone giggled. Maya's voice remained steady. I have a valid ticket. I've done nothing wrong. You're removing me based solely on my appearance. I'm removing you because you're causing a disturbance, Captain Brooks snapped. Now go, before I call security. Jessica stepped forward with a pair of scissors. Before Maya could react, she cut the boarding pass in half. The sound echoed in a suddenly silent cabin. Let's go, Jessica said, pointing toward the door. Maya stood slowly. She pulled her backpack from the overhead bin. Every movement was calm, deliberate. She walked down the aisle, past the smirking faces, past the recording phones, past the champagne-sipping woman who whispered, finally. At the door, Maya paused. She turned back to face Captain Brooks and Jessica. Thank you, she said quietly. You've shown me exactly what I needed to see. Then she walked off the plane. Maya sat in the terminal and pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from her assistant, David. She called him back. Maya, David answered immediately. How did it go? Exactly as expected, she said. They removed you. Cut my ticket in half. The captain never even looked at my boarding pass. David was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Make sure Captain Brooks and his head flight attendant are there. Tell them it's mandatory. Consider it done. She thought about her father. He'd started Pacific Airways 40 years ago with one plane and a dream. Worked 18-hour days. Flew the routes himself. Built the airline from nothing. When he died 5 years ago, he'd left everything to Maya. Not because she was his daughter, but because she'd worked beside him for 20 years. Started in baggage handling when she was 16. Worked her way through every department. Learned every job. The board had been shocked when the will was read. A 28-year-old woman inheriting a billion-dollar airline. They tried to fight it. Tried to push her out. But Maya's father had been thorough. The company was hers, completely and legally. She'd spent the last 5 years proving herself. Growing the airline. Increasing profits. Treating employees fairly. But she'd heard the rumors. The complaints. Passengers being judged. Staff acting superior. The culture her father built slowly rotting from the inside. So she'd decided to see it for herself. She'd booked a ticket under a fake name. Dressed down. Removed every sign of wealth. And boarded a Pacific Airways flight to see how her own employees would treat someone who looked poor. The results had been worse than she'd imagined. The next morning, the conference room at Pacific Airways headquarters was packed. Executives in expensive suits. Department heads checking their phones. Everyone wondering why they'd been called in on such short notice. Captain Richard Brooks sat near the front, relaxed. He'd been with the airline for 15 years. Flown thousands of flights. He was practically untouchable. Jessica sat beside him, nervous but trying not to show it. She'd heard rumors that someone had complained about yesterday's incident. But she'd only been following protocol. Maintaining standards. That passenger clearly didn't belong in first class. At exactly 9 a.m., the door opened. Maya walked in. She wore a black suit, simple but perfectly tailored. Her hair was down, professional. Small diamond earrings. Polished shoes. She carried the same backpack from yesterday, cleaned but still obviously old. The room went silent. Captain Brooks stared. Jessica's face went white. Maya walked to the head of the table and set down her backpack. She didn't sit. "Good morning," she said. "For those who don't know me, I'm Maya Chen. I own this airline." She let that sink in. Watched the recognition spread across faces. Watched Jessica's hands start to shake. "Yesterday, I boarded flight 447 to San Francisco. I had a valid first-class ticket, purchased under a different name. I was removed from the aircraft before takeoff." She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. The wall monitor came to life. Security footage from the plane. Crystal clear. Every moment. Every word. The room watched in silence as Jessica questioned Maya's ticket. As passengers laughed and recorded. As Captain Brooks ordered her off without even checking her boarding pass. As Jessica cut the ticket in half. When the video ended, Maya turned to face the room. Captain Brooks removed a paying passenger based solely on appearance. No investigation. No verification. Just assumption. Brooks tried to speak. "Ms. Chen, I'm not finished." Her voice was quiet but absolute. Jessica questioned a valid ticket, insulted a passenger, and destroyed airline property. The boarding pass she cut belonged to this airline. She tapped her phone again. Another video. Passengers in the cabin after she left. "Did you get that on video? She actually thought she could sit with us." Laughter. Mockery. Celebration. Not one person, Maya said, questioned whether this was right. Not one employee stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, someone's appearance doesn't determine their worth. The room was silent except for Jessica's quiet crying. "Here's what's going to happen," Maya continued. "Captain Brooks, you're suspended without pay for 30 days. You'll undergo mandatory bias training. If there's one more incident like this, you're fired." Brooks opened his mouth, then closed it. "Jessica, same for you. 30 days. Training. One more incident, you're done." Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "But they're not the real problem," Maya said, turning to address the full room. "The problem is the culture we've allowed. A culture that judges people by their clothes, their bags, their appearance. A culture that treats first class like a private club instead of a service we provide." She picked up her backpack, held it up. "My father carried this bag when he started this airline. He worked 7 days a week. Slept in the airport. $8 meals. He never forgot where he came from. Never forgot that every passenger, regardless of how they look, deserves respect." She set the bag down. "We've forgotten that. And it changes today." Over the next 6 months, Maya restructured everything. New training programs. Mandatory for all staff. Focused on respect, dignity, and service. Anonymous passenger reviews. Real consequences for discrimination. Promoted people based on performance, not politics. A baggage handler became a manager. A gate agent became a training director. Captain Brooks completed his suspension and training. He returned different. Quieter. More thoughtful. He started mentoring younger pilots, teaching them that technical skill wasn't enough. You had to see people as people. Jessica struggled more. The video had leaked, despite Maya's efforts to keep it internal. Social media found her. The comments were brutal. She quit 3 months later, unable to handle the constant recognition and criticism. Maya didn't celebrate that. She understood that public humiliation helped no one. The point wasn't revenge. It was change. She also launched a new program, Dignity Class. Every ticket, regardless of price, came with the same promise, respect. First class still existed, but it was about comfort, not superiority. The marketing campaign was simple. Videos of real employees talking about what respect meant to them. No actors. No scripts. Just honest people doing their jobs. Revenue actually increased. Turns out, when you treat people well, they come back. They tell their friends. They choose your airline over competitors. 1 year after the incident, Maya boarded another Pacific Airways flight. Same route. Same gate. Different plane. She wore jeans and a sweater. Carried her father's old backpack. Looked like any other passenger. The gate agent, a young woman named Sarah, scanned her ticket and smiled. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Chen. We're glad to have you." Maya paused. "You know who I am?" "Of course. You're the owner." "But also." Sarah hesitated. "You're the reason I still have this job." "What do you mean?" 6 months ago, I reported a supervisor for discriminating against a passenger. Old policies, I would have been fired for causing trouble. New policies, the supervisor got suspended. You created a space where we can do the right thing. Maya smiled, genuinely touched. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for listening. On the plane, Maya found her seat in economy. She'd specifically chosen it. Wanted to experience what most passengers experienced. The flight attendant, a middle-aged man named Tom, came by with drinks. He treated every passenger the same. Friendly. Professional. Kind. When he got to Maya, he handed her a water and said quietly, "Ms. Chen, I just want to say thank you. My daughter saw the news coverage last year. About what you did. She told me it made her proud that I work for Pacific Airways. That means more than I can say. Your daughter is lucky to have you," Maya said. The flight was smooth. No incidents. No drama. Just people traveling from one place to another, all treated with basic human dignity. When they landed, Maya stayed in her seat until everyone else had deplaned. She liked watching people. The tired businesswoman finally relaxing. The young couple holding hands. The elderly man being helped with his bag by another passenger. This was what her father had dreamed of. Not an airline. But a community in the sky. The next board meeting showed the results. Revenue up 18%. Customer satisfaction at an all-time high. We're profitable and ethical, Maya said. Those two things aren't in conflict. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Captain Brooks asked if you have a minute to talk. Maya replied, "Send him up." 5 minutes later, Captain Brooks knocked on her door. "Come in." He entered, clearly nervous. He'd changed over the past year. Lost some of his arrogance. Gained some humility. "Ms. Chen, I wanted to thank you." Maya gestured to a chair. "For what?" "For not firing me. For giving me a chance to learn. I was." He struggled with the words. "I was wrong. About you. About what matters. I spent 15 years thinking I was better than people because I flew planes. Because I wore a uniform. You taught me that respect isn't about position. It's about character. You taught yourself that, Maya said. I just created the opportunity. I have a daughter, Brooks continued. She's 22. About to graduate college. When that video leaked, she saw it. Called me crying. Asked me how I could treat someone that way. I had no good answer. He looked down at his hands. She's the reason I stayed. The reason I did the training. I wanted her to be proud of me again. And last week, she told me she was. She said I'd become the father she always knew I could be. His voice cracked on those last words. Maya felt her own throat tighten. That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. Thank you for believing that was possible, Brooks said. After he left, Maya sat alone in the quiet office. She thought about the journey. The humiliation on that plane. The anger she'd felt. The temptation for revenge. She'd chosen a different path. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. Revenge would have felt good for a moment. But building something better, creating lasting change, treating people with dignity even when they didn't deserve it, that felt good forever. 2 years later, Maya boarded another flight. This time, international. Tokyo to Los Angeles. 14 hours. She sat in economy, middle seat. The person on her left was a college student, headphones in, studying. The person on her right was an elderly Japanese woman who spoke no English. Halfway through the flight, the elderly woman became agitated. She was trying to ask the flight attendant something but couldn't communicate. Maya, who spoke basic Japanese from business trips, translated. The woman needed help with her medication but didn't know which pills to take when. The flight attendant, a kind young man named Peter, could have just walked away. Language barrier. Not his job. But he didn't. He sat down, pulled out his phone, used a translation app, and spent 20 minutes helping the woman organize her medication. Made sure she understood. Checked on her 3 more times during the flight. When they landed, the elderly woman was crying with gratitude. She bowed deeply to Peter, saying "arigato" over and over. Peter just smiled and said, "It's my pleasure to help." After they deplaned, Maya approached Peter. "That was above and beyond," she said. He shrugged, embarrassed. "It's just the right thing to do. Not everyone sees it that way. Maybe not everywhere. But here at Pacific Airways, that's what we do." Owner made it clear, every passenger matters. Maya smiled. The owner sounds smart. She is. Changed everything. Made us remember why we do this job in the first place. He walked away, not knowing who he'd been talking to. Maya stood in the terminal, watching passengers reunite with families, grab their bags, start their journeys. This was the dream. Not perfection, that was impossible. But progress. Growth. A genuine effort to see people as people, regardless of appearance, wealth, or status. She pulled out her phone and texted David, "I'm flying economy again next month. Don't tell anyone. I want the real experience." He replied immediately, "You know you own the airline, right? You can fly however you want." She smiled and typed back, "That's exactly why I need to fly economy. How else will I know what needs fixing?" 3 years after the incident, a documentary crew approached Maya. They wanted to tell her story. The humiliation. The comeback. The transformation of Pacific Airways. She declined. "It's not about me," she told them. "It's about the thousands of employees who show up every day and choose to be kind. Film them. Tell their stories." The documentary crew was confused but agreed. They spent 6 months following Pacific Airways employees. Pilots. Flight attendants. Gate agents. Baggage handlers. Maintenance crews. The resulting film, called Above the Clouds, won awards. It showed the daily reality of airline work. The challenges. The difficult passengers. The long hours. But also the moments of grace. The connections. The small acts of kindness that made everything worthwhile. In one scene, a flight attendant helped a first-time flyer, a refugee who was terrified of flying, feel safe. Held her hand during takeoff. In another, a gate agent worked for 2 hours to rebook a family whose father had just died, getting them home in time for the funeral. Stayed late. Made dozens of calls. Refused to give up. In another, a pilot landed in terrible weather to get a passenger to her daughter's wedding. Technically he could have diverted. But he knew what it would mean to that mother to miss that moment. The film never mentioned Maya directly. But in the credits, there was a dedication to the leaders who create space for humanity. 5 years after the incident, Maya was invited to speak at a business conference. The topic, ethical leadership in corporate America. She almost declined. Public speaking wasn't her strength. But her team convinced her the message mattered. Standing on stage in front of 1,000 executives, Maya felt nervous for the first time in years. She began with the truth. 5 years ago, I was thrown off my own airline. Humiliated. Judged. Dismissed. And it was the best thing that ever happened to Pacific Airways. She told the story. Not to shame anyone, but to illustrate what happens when culture goes wrong. When appearance matters more than character. When profit supersedes people. I could have fired everyone involved, she said. Gotten revenge. Made an example. But that wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just created fear. Instead, I chose to invest. In training. In systems. In people. I chose to believe that most people want to do the right thing. They just need permission and support. She showed them the numbers. The growth. The retention rates. The customer satisfaction. Ethics isn't the opposite of profit. Ethics is the foundation of sustainable profit. When you treat people well, employees and customers, they invest back in you. Loyalty. Trust. Support. You can't buy those things. You earn them. The audience was silent, listening. I'm not special, Maya continued. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to accept that cruelty and business had to go together. Someone who remembered that every spreadsheet represents real people. Every decision impacts real lives. She paused, looking out at the faces. 5 years ago, Captain Brooks and Jessica treated me terribly. Today, Captain Brooks is one of our best mentors. He teaches new pilots about respect and dignity. Jessica chose a different path, and I hope she's found peace. But the point is, people can change. Systems can change. It starts with believing that change is possible. The standing ovation surprised her. She'd expected polite applause, maybe some questions. Instead, people stood, clapping, some wiping their eyes. After the speech, dozens of executives approached her. They had their own stories. Their own struggles with corporate culture. Their own desire to do better. One woman, a CEO of a tech company, said, "I've been trying to implement changes for 2 years. The board fights me at every turn." How did you do it? Maya thought for a moment. I owned the company. That helped. But more than that, I was willing to lose money in the short term for values in the long term. That's the hard part. Most boards can't see past the next quarter. So what do I do? Document everything. Show them the long-term costs of bad culture. Employee turnover. Legal risks. Brand damage. Make the ethical case and the business case. And if they still won't listen? Maya shrugged. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away. The woman nodded, understanding the weight of that choice. 7 years after the incident, Maya received an unexpected letter. It was from Jessica. Dear Ms. Chen. I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away. I've spent the last 7 years thinking about that day on the plane. What I did. What I said. How I treated you. I was wrong. I'd like to say I didn't know better, but that's not true. I did know better. I just chose convenience over conscience. It was easier to judge you than to defend you. Easier to enforce standards than to question whether those standards were right. After I left Pacific Airways, I struggled. The video haunted me. Every interview, every job application, people would recognize me. Oh, you're that flight attendant. Some were sympathetic. Most weren't. I was angry at first. Angry at you for setting me up. Angry at the internet for never forgetting. Angry at myself for caring what strangers thought. It took me 3 years to understand, I wasn't the victim. You were. And so was every passenger I'd ever judged, dismissed, or treated as less than. I went back to school. Got a degree in social work. Now I work with homeless populations. People society judges the way I judged you. People dismissed because of how they look, what they wear, where they sleep. Every day, I try to treat them the way I should have treated you. With dignity. With respect. With humanity. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing to say thank you. You could have destroyed me. You chose to teach me instead. That grace, even when I didn't extend it to you, changed my life. I hope Pacific Airways is everything you dreamed it could be. Sincerely, Jessica. Maya read the letter 3 times. She sat with it. Felt the weight of it. Then she did something unexpected. She wrote back. Dear Jessica. Thank you for your letter. Your honesty means more than you know. You're right, you were wrong that day. But you're also right that people can change. The fact that you've spent 7 years becoming someone different, someone better, speaks to your character now, not your character then. Forgiveness isn't something I can give or withhold. That's between you and yourself. But I can tell you this, I don't think of you as the person who kicked me off a plane. I think of you as someone who learned a hard lesson and chose growth over bitterness. That's rare. That's valuable. If you ever want to visit Pacific Airways, see what we've built, you're welcome. No cameras. No publicity. Just closure, if you need it. Take care of yourself. And thank you for the work you're doing now. Those people are lucky to have you. Warmly, Maya Chen. She sent the letter and didn't expect a response. 3 months later, Jessica showed up at Pacific Airways headquarters. They met in Maya's office. Jessica looked different. Older. Softer. More genuine. They talked for 2 hours. About that day. About regret. About redemption. About the impossibility of changing the past and the necessity of changing the future. When Jessica left, she paused at the door. I hope someday I can do for someone what you did for me. You already are, Maya said. Every day. 10 years after the incident, Maya visited her father's grave. Pacific Airways has 15,000 employees now, she told him. We fly to 48 countries. But more than that, Dad, I think we're good. Really good. She stayed for another hour, then drove back to the office. There was work to do. Always work to do. 15 years after the incident, a reporter asked Maya if she'd ever regretted that day on the plane. Regretted it? No. It was terrible in the moment, but necessary in the long run. Sometimes you need to see the worst to build toward the best. Do you think the airline industry has changed? Maya considered the question. Some airlines have. Some haven't. Change is slow. Uncomfortable. It requires admitting you were wrong. That's hard for corporations. Hard for people. What's your advice for other business leaders? Get on the ground. Experience what your lowest paid employee experiences. What your average customer experiences. Don't just look at reports. Feel it. Then ask yourself if that's the company you want to build. The interview went viral, as these things do. Other CEOs started doing their own undercover experiences. Some genuine. Some publicity stunts. Maya didn't mind. If even one company genuinely changed, genuinely improved how they treated people, it was worth the copycats. 20 years after the incident, Maya was ready to retire. She was 53. Pacific Airways was stable. Successful. Everything she dreamed. She announced her retirement at a company-wide meeting. Thousands of employees gathered, either in person or watching via video. "I'm not leaving because something's wrong," she said. "I'm leaving because everything's right. The culture we've built doesn't depend on me anymore. It depends on you. Every one of you." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. 20 years ago, I was humiliated on one of our flights. Kicked off for looking poor. That incident could have destroyed this airline. Instead, we chose to let it transform us. We chose dignity over discrimination. Respect over revenue. People over profit. And you know what? We got the revenue and profit anyway. Because treating people well is good business. But more than that, it's the right thing to do. She paused, emotion catching in her throat. My father built this airline with his hands. I tried to build it with my heart. But you, all of you, built it with your daily choices. Every kind word. Every patient interaction. Every time you saw someone struggling and chose to help instead of judge. That's the Real Pacific Airways. Not me. You. The applause was thunderous. After the meeting, a young gate agent approached her. She couldn't have been more than 25. "Ms. Chen, I just started 6 months ago. I never met you before today. But I want you to know, this company changed my life. I was working retail before. Customers treated me like garbage. Managers treated me worse. Here, people care. About passengers. About each other. About doing things right. That culture you built. It's real. It's not just corporate talk. We live it every day." Maya hugged her, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for keeping it alive." Maya's last day was quiet. She cleaned out her office. Packed the photos. The old backpack. Captain Brooks, now retired himself, came to say goodbye. "End of an era," he said. "Beginning of a new one," Maya corrected. "The best leaders make themselves unnecessary. You did that. 15 years ago, you could have destroyed me. Ended my career. Instead, you gave me a chance to be better. I'll never forget that." They hugged, two people who'd started as adversaries and ended as something like friends. After everyone left, Maya sat alone in the empty office. She pulled out her father's old backpack. Inside was the paperback book she'd been reading that day 20 years ago. She never did finish it. She opened to the marked page and started reading. An hour later, her assistant David knocked. "Ready?" "Ready." They walked through the headquarters, past the photos of planes, the employee recognition wall, the mission statement her father had written 40 years ago, "Fly with heart." In the parking lot, Maya paused and looked back at the building. "It's not about revenge," she said, more to herself than to David. "It never was. It's about remembering that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Everyone deserves kindness. Everyone deserves dignity. Even the people who don't give it to you, David said. Especially the people who don't give it to you. She got in her car, an old sedan she'd been driving for 15 years. Could have afforded anything. Chose simplicity. As she drove away, she thought about that young woman on the plane. The one who'd been judged, humiliated, dismissed. She'd turned that pain into purpose. That anger into action. That humiliation into hope. And maybe, just maybe, she'd made the world a tiny bit kinder. That was enough.